Pueblo, Colorado, 2021 hours. The harsh, buzzing lights of the two-star motel strains the late-night eyes. The muggy evening suffocated the wheezing AC, but Gonzalez was eerily cool and calm in front of the chintzy motel counter. The receptionist stared up at Gonzalez, who met his gaze with equal measure, his face a death mask of dead nerves. The two were quite a contrast. The receptionist's skin was pimply and greasy. Gonzalez's was smooth and clammy. The receptionist's eyes were baggy and bloodshot, whereas Gonzalez's were tight and glassy. One was alive, while the other was dead. Cristobal Gonzalez, a maintenance tech turned corpse, was a bit undressed. He wore the tattered remains of a blue tarp around his waist, tied like a locker room towel, and a medium FBI jacket on his triple XL frame. The zipper had burst right as he opened the front door, and the Y incision on his barrel chest was plainly visible, as was the circlet cut into his skull, both crudely stitched up with post-mortem sutures. A large chunk of his left pectoral was missing, and if someone had undressed him, they would have found a similarly grisly entry wound on his back, almost as if he had been shot. And contrary to all logic and common sense, he was standing in the lobby of a rundown motel, staring down with the wooden stiffness of the most resolute of boards. Before the receptionist could ask any questions, Quinn Law, federal necromancer, lolled her head and smirked. Her voice came out slurred, her Miami accent prominent.
Me and Chris came up for a friend's party for the longest day of the year. Costume party. I'm Scully, and he's the dead body I'm investigating tonight.
Quinn giggled again, but the smile disappeared, and she rapped against the desk.
Double room, please.
The receptionist was either too tired or too inebriated to ask too many questions, so he passed the key over without issue. Room 13. A good omen. Quinn paid in cash and dragged Chris out of the lobby, down the row of lot-facing rooms, and pushing him inside before securing the deadbolt behind her. The act dropped, and her face turned into a haggard mess to rival the receptionist. She swiveled towards one of the beds and made towards it like a zombie, a creature she had a great deal of familiarity with. Gonzalez looked around as Quinn flopped onto the bed, not bothering to get undressed. How long are we staying for? She rolled over, staring at the popcorn ceiling through half-slitted eyes.
If Jenny's using the solstice as an auspicious amplifier, we have until noon to stop her. A call went out to every UIU office within 200 miles of here, so by the time we roll up to Florence, we should have a small occult army backing us. Once we get the appropriate warrants, of course.
Saying that while on a moderately soft bed took too much out of Quinn, her eyelids wavering and threatening to fully close. Throughout the day, she had fought several different monsters, was involved in a high-octane car chase, and had tunneled through dimensions twice. Even with a powerful and illegal occult focus like the Numenite pendant, that was a lot of stuff to achieve on little sleep and too much caffeine. Quinn's face sunk into the pillow a bit more.
Just guard the door, please. Need to close my eyes for a bit.
She needed a full 8 hours, maybe 12. The springs on the other bed creaked. Don't worry, you got time. The last thing she saw was Gonzalez's hulking frame staring at the door with a splintered baseball bat in his hands. Then, the siren call of sleep finally won against her protesting mind, and her eyes closed, letting her descend into a haunted dreamscape. Quinn dreamt of seas of clutching hands tearing at her hair, suspended above swirling whirlpools of blood. The spider was there, weaving a barbed web to catch her, smiling with a crooked, uncountable teeth as the silk dripped poison and bile. A legion of corpses marched from Hades, the pit, and the rest of the 23 hells, whispering, murder, pig, oathbreaker. They divided her soul amongst them, dragging each struggling bit back into their respective afterlives. 55 became 56, another pallid face joining the host in an endless mirror maze. Quinn could hear a tinny sound, a small, unending shriek that pierced through the hateful dead's chantings and rattled inside of his skull like tinnitus. Her own scream. It wasn't the worst dream she had that year. It was still dark in the motel when she awoke to the sweet scent of human decay. The odd car could be heard moving outside, headlights occasionally piercing through the Venetian blinds to paint moving bars against the wall, and Cristobal's face, He had moved from the bed to the stained couch, gaze cast downwards. He was experimentally picking at his forearm, near the bullet wounds that had bored between the bones in a clean cylinder of excised flesh. He would pinch the skin next to the expanding wound and peel it back until it tore away from the rest of his hide, upon which he would drop the patch of skin in a waste paper basket between his legs. Repeat. He had methodically degloved almost his entire forearm in that manner, the ligaments and sinews visibly contracting and relaxing as he flexed his hand. Law rapidly blinked sleep out of her eyes, stretching out to flick on the lamp, bathing the room in a warm orange glow.
What are you doing, Cristobal?
He didn't blink as he looked up. He hadn't blinked in hours, hadn't found the need to. His voice was a sotto wheeze from his punctured lung. I can't feel it. It's numb. Quinn rubbed her eyes as she stood.
Why didn't you rest?
Cristobal stared on his hand, peeling the inside skin of his thumb up to the pad. Couldn't sleep. Don't know if I can. Just waiting at this point. Right. His soul wasn't chained to biological functions anymore. Always on, all the time. Wasn't like normal ghosts, where they essentially sleepwalks through death until disturbed or agitated. He was 24/7, 365. Quinn glanced over at the bedside clock. 4:30. The dawn of the solstice wasn't until 5, but the sky was already beginning to lighten.
And you've been doing this?
There was a puzzle in the closet, but it was missing some pieces. Couldn't really go for a walk outside either. Not without clothes or a beating heart. Quinn shuffled over to him, fluttering his hand. Scooch. Cristobal obliged, and Quinn sat next to him on the sofa. She dragged out her duffel and pulled out some granola. She munched on the bar, studying the man's profile. He had the body of a linebacker, barrel-chested and muscular. He had probably a head and a half and 120 pounds on her, a looming hulk compared to her less-than-average build. Cristobal's features were rough and rounded, but he was handsome. Well, he would have been, if not for the rot. The panipsycho's touch, Snow White syndrome, had previously left him perfectly preserved by shackling his soul to his corpse. But through a combination of Quinn's meddling and the coming of midsummer, a cosmological reset through which many curses and enchantments were broken, time was finally beginning to catch up with Cristobal. His formerly marbled, graying features were now bruised and violently colored. His legs and feet purpled and blackened. His raven hair was falling out in tufts, scattering in an unfelt wind to kiss the shag carpeting. Quinn could see a few maggots in the exposed flesh of his arm, spawned through an act of magical abiogenesis. Entropy on fast forward, Cristobal would be ash by dawn. She gently asked him a question as a means of distraction, both for him and herself.
How'd you end up doing HVAC for the pentagram?
Cristobal paused, rolling a half-torn piece of skin between his fingers. Happenstance, I suppose. There was a pause as Quinn waited for him to elaborate, and Cristobal let out a rattled sigh. Worked in Marquette for 5 years. Did construction with my dad the 7 before. I planned on going to college, but he rolled his shoulder and produced a clicking sound distinct from the rigor mortis.
Dislocation?
Full. PT was hard, and I couldn't get my football scholarship, so there went that plan. Dropped out of construction for the same reason. The strain was getting too much. The dredged-up memory made his lips pull into a white-lipped grimace.
Oh.
Yeah. Cristobal thrust himself off the couch and moved to the window, looking across the twilight-shrouded parking lot to the first hints of dawn in the east. He visibly relaxed, his profile softening under the gentle glow. Quinn took another bite of granola, looking at the discarded skin in the wastebasket. One strip curled into itself, darkening and segmenting until a newly formed mealworm rolled over and began to happily munch on the other pieces of skin. What about you? She looked up.
Huh?
Cristobal turned, smiled faintly, and and wriggled his fingers, the nails buckling and cracking from the bloat. How'd you get your gig, Dr. Frankenstein?
Oh, yeah. Mother was a lawyer, Dad was a tow truck driver. Didn't really want to mess with cars all my life, so I went into law enforcement.
Was necromancy taught at the FBI?
Well, I guess blood-sucking lawyers and necromancers aren't too far removed from each other, are they?
Cristobal's smile grew into a grin. Does she know magic too? That drew a smirk on her lips.
Nah, but she was a legal wizard, I swear. A bureaumancer, summoning reams of petitions to kill people with paper cuts. She knew of magic, but didn't know magic. Prosecuted UIU cases. Never actually told me, but then again, she never did keep her documents secure enough from preteen me.
Cristobal's smile faded. Wait, was? Quinn nodded, her eyes again fixed on the waste paper basket. 10 worms now.
About 6 years ago. Dad was heartbroken.
And he's...
Retired. Out in Key West. He comes to visit every so often. My coworkers love him.
Cristobal remembered to take a breath, air softly whistling out of the bullet wound. But you're a necromancer. She was shaking her head before Cristobal finished.
No, I'm not doing that to her. Wherever she is, not trying that.
Quinn took another bite.
Besides, she warded her casket just in case I got any funny ideas.
Cristobal clicked his teeth in frustration. But, again, you're a necromancer. An honest-to-God necromancer. You don't have to deal with... He paused and parroted Quinn again. Wherever she is. Like, heaven. Quinn nodded again, eyes still downcast. Cristobal sat down next to her again, shedding maggots from his skeletonized arm. You believe there's a heaven? Quinn turned to look Cristobal in his glassy eyes, widening with cataracts.
And you don't?
His voice came out softly. Of course I do. It should have been quiet in the motel room, but people did not stop talking after death. The 55 souls in her duffel bag muttered muffled curses, trapped in their prismatic tomb. A lone, reedy cry of a corpse somewhere in the woods behind the motel. Dried insects wrapped in a curled piece of flypaper, droning white noise, layers of skin cells, itching. It would have been overwhelming if Quinn hadn't been used to it, and it was always worse when she was tired. Quinn rocked onto her heels, clapping her hands together to break the unsilence.
Let's finish that puzzle while there's still moonlight.
Out of a 500-piece puzzle, there were about 475 jigsaws left. The rest had scattered to the wind, either falling into disused corners or behind furniture or into a traveler's luggage. But that still meant they had 95% of a puzzle to do, a family of cartoon animals on a fantasy picnic. They had just about finished the edge before Cristobal spoke again. Heaven, huh? Quinn had been working on assembling the picnickers.
Yeah.
The corpse fumbled the pieces with his degloved fingers. You're religious, then?
If you had to put a name on it, I guess it would be.
Quinn waved her hand, holding the remnants of the granola bar.
Lowercase c Catholic deist with Aquinian characteristics? No, religious is fine, I think.
Would all this make you a heretic? What with the necromancy and the blaspheming and such? Cristobal ran out of edge pieces and moved on to the bear and beehive. Quinn spoke around the rest of the granola.
God has special providence for fools and Americans. I happen to be both, so my soul is secure.
You and me both, huh?
I sure hope so. What about you?
I never really thought about it. Figured I'd care about this stuff when I was either old or dead. Cristobal let out a cold bark of a laugh, causing something to ooze out of his abdominal wound. Yes, now is a good time for this talk. Quinn glanced at the clock. 4:48. Close now.
Yeah, guess it is.
They continued to play, going through the motions, despite both of them knowing the puzzle would never be completed. It was a while before Cristobal spoke up again. What makes you so sure? Cristobal's face was twisted, his voice slurring and cloyed, as if the rot had gotten to his vocal cords. His motor control was fading, the holographic heart stitched onto his chest beating arrhythmically. His voice took on a desperate edge. What makes you so sure there's something else? Cristobal was a dead man walking in more ways than one. Quinn knew it, and he knew it too. His probing questions were a means to solicit an answer in the little time he had left. The answer, maybe. As a necromancer, she was closer to death than most people who weren't actively dying. She had the answer, didn't she?
I just know.
How? Are you sure? There was a hole in the picnic basket, a missing jigsaw piece Quinn couldn't find. She sighed and searched for something, a way to find the right words to say. But it all fell apart in her head. No, of course I'm not sure. There's never been evidence of an afterlife in any reputable journal, she wanted to say. But I've seen too much and know too much to know that this isn't the end, whatever comes next. I've seen gods, I've seen the edge of hell, I bargained with the devil and won. For 10 drachma, I can buy a soul from a man with a backward smile, but it costs 2 to cross the Styx. Good profit for him, which means that there's something on the other side, doesn't it? Quinn's vision blurred, and she found herself standing, pacing, thinking, trying to figure out how to tell a dying man what she knew without lying to him. There are other worlds, other realities, both above and below, left and right. So why not something forward, huh? Why can't there be something ahead to look forward to? They haunted her, the dead she knew, the mummified punk in the crone's nest, the bodyguard at the governor's mansion, the kids at Deer, the 55 in the pendant, her mother, people she couldn't save and didn't know if they had been or could have been, or ever could be. Quinn broke, grinding his teeth so hard she thought sparks would fly or bone would crack. His voice trembled a little as she tried to form a coherent thought. Ghosts aren't people. They're reflections, shades. Everything you do ripples out, and those ripples can make something, a real something. A ghost is something you leave behind, which means you go somewhere. They found the weight of the soul using a very precise scale. Once you die, that weight disappears. It goes somewhere. It becomes something else. She hazarded a glimpse at Cristobal and saw his eyes glint like 2 silver dollars. His voice had degenerated further to a ragged whisper. What has it become? Quinn looked away from Cristobal and looked out the window. The sky was turning pink. The mountains looked like purple construction paper cutouts a toddler glued to the horizon. Something better, I think. There's a power in a soul, and that power can't just go away and dissipate to nothing. Sometimes it forms a ghost, and sometimes... I've never talked to the dying, only the dead. I thought I would be better at this than this. Chris stared at the wood grain of the table for a bit, then dropped a puzzle piece and stood. He slowly limped towards her, his left Achilles tendon having decayed to dust. He offered a hand, his good hand, to Quinn, her eyes bright and glimmering, his dull and flat. They were still able to convey a warmth that Quinn hadn't felt in a while. Watch the sunrise with me. On the balcony, there were 2 folding chairs overlooking the parking lot, with nylon straps as creaky as dried leather. They roughly complained as Chris collapsed into one, his tarp exchanged for a white bathrobe stained brown from his rotted, oozing fluids. What's your plan? Chris rolled his head to look at Quinn, his neck rupturing and darkening with spoiled blood. I know you have a plan for Jenny. I want to know the plan before I go. Quinn bit her lip and nodded. The inklings of one, yeah. She looked down at her hands and noted for the first time their blackened tips from where she had held the soul shard pendant. The Numenite was a powerful focus, capable of awesome things, but it exacted a toll on its wielder. If employed too much, it sucked the soul out of the wizard, using it and added it to its roster, assuming the crystal didn't shatter under the strain first, releasing all of the trapped, vengeful souls in the process. Law exhaled, then told Chris the plan, adding details on the fly that she hadn't quite figured out until that point. Met with ponderous silence, she hesitated to add a qualifier.
I know it's not much.
That seems to be the running theme with all your ideas. Quinn clicked her teeth.
Well, you wanted to know.
So sue me. The tree rustled, and the lost corpse in the woods seemed to lessen his scraping screams with the coming dawn. Chris spoke up again. I want to help. Quinn sighed and palmed her face.
Chris, you are actively decaying.
I still want to help.
You can't.
I will, Chris roared, hacking up phlegm and blood and God knows what else on the concrete. He wiped the red spittle from his mouth onto the already ruined bathrobe and cleared his throat. I will. You will help me help you. Quinn gently rested a hand on his softening arm.
I can't. You need to rest, Chris.
I'll rest when I'm dead for good.
Chris.
Quinn, this is my choice. I can't rest easy knowing that you're going to be in trouble within a couple of hours. And if I can do something in that nutso plan you've half-baked, I damn well will. His withered lips and gums were set in a stubborn snarl. I'm not just going to sit and rot here while you get yourself shot. Now hurry up and help me help you so this beautiful morning doesn't go to waste. Quinn clenched her jaw, her skin crackling with static electricity charged by her anger. Type A spirit, awareness, and agency. God damn it all. She unclenched the hands that she had unconsciously balled into fists.
Fine, but you're not going to like it.
Chris's mouth split open in a Glasgow smile. Try me. The mountains had started getting detail, their purple outlines slowly resolving into blue forests and gray, rocky crags. Quinn's face resembled those old stones, worry lines etched like the marks of old creek beds, as she tried to remember the forbidden geometries of the working found only in the confiscated manuscripts. It was delicate going, and they had limited time. In Florida, we don't really have the mountains. It's mostly just us and the sea. Chris's voice was as raspy as Quinn's chalk, scraping lines and curves into the balcony's concrete. Same with Chicago and the lake. Sometimes when the sun rose, it was like the water was on fire. I wish I was home.
Do you have a family there?
My parents. I was helping them with bills. My girlfriend and siblings. You? The agent smiled faintly, completing the circle.
Yeah, my partner's back home. Haven't seen her in weeks, but hopefully I'll see her soon.
Yeah, you will. She smiled grimly.
If you say so.
The pastel gradient advanced across the firmament. Chris slumped in his chair as the flesh and sinews of his legs peeled from their holdfasts, leaving greasy, stained bones behind. His face was bruised and swelling. Will it hurt? Quinn's face wasn't above a whisper now. She didn't trust it to go any louder for fear of it cracking.
Not any more than the first time. And I'm with you now, every step of the way.
She threaded her fingers between his and squeezed them, looking past the squelching flesh into the eyes of the man she had just met scant hours before.
It'll be okay. I'm here.
Chris tried to inhale to speak once more, but he choked and twitched. The warm rays of the rising sun pierced over the peaks of the Colorado Range and kissed his cheeks. His cataracts glittered a brilliant white as he looked into the sun. It's so beautiful. Quinn tightened her grip on his slack hand. What do you see? The corpse's neck fell forward as the ligaments sloughed away, the head rolling across the balcony. But Chris still sat in the chair as a shimmering mirage, his voice the sound of chiming glass as hazy eyes stared into the dawn. He didn't turn to look at Quinn, for she knew he couldn't see her anymore. Stars. I see stars. The mirage evaporated, and the corpse of Chris disintegrated into dust, leaving nothing but ash and polished bone behind. The curse sloughed off like a plume of smoke, but was contained by the hexagrammatic warden circle Quinn had drawn underneath the deck chair. The smoke buffeted and swirled, drawn down into the grounding wire until it shone silver, energizing the working. The ringing echo of Chris's voice turned down into a tenor, then a baritone, then an infrasonic boom that rattled fillings. The resonant frequency of ash. His remains twitched and shuddered, and slowly began to clump together again. Larger chunks rolled within the circle and collecting the ash like a kid building a snowman. The ash ball hovered in the air as a dark gray orb and began to shrink. It grew smaller and smaller, condensing and heating white-hot until Quinn thought it would disappear entirely in a miniature fireball, before dropping to the ground with a fragile clink. Among the gleaming bones and scorched, infernal calculus drawn in concrete was a small, clear sliver of glass, the size and shape of a carpentry nail. Within that small sliver, as it caught the light of the rising sun, a fragment of a single eye could be seen, caught with a mixture of surprise and horror. Cristobal's eye, trapped in a prism of pure numinite. Quinn dispelled the errant energies that still eddied around the circle and approached the smoking bones, carefully dangling the numinite pendant by the cord. Like a magnet, it slowly moved against gravity until it hung directly above what was once Cristobal Gonzalez. The sliver on the ground quaked and rattled before flying upwards and joining his damned brethren. 55 became 56, and a new voice joined the hateful ensemble. A cloud passed over the sun, leaving Quinn alone in its shadow, but for the whispers of the dead.